Hi everybody, and welcome to my next edition of Match Memories. Again, I'd like to start this episode by thanking everyone for their kind messages. It's so good to know that you're enjoying it, and you're enjoying sort of experience the backstage, sort of action, the untold stories, and even the little laughable ones, like Stevie snoring and waking up in the middle of the night. It's absolutely fantastic, and I'm really enjoying doing them. For today's one, I want to do with a little bit of a twist. As you probably noticed with all the talks that I've done so far, I try to make them obviously tell you the actual story and exactly what happened behind the scenes, but to try and sort of educate you on the way that I try to educate myself in these big matches, the way I try to learn, the way I try to better myself, the things I try to notice. A little bit like when we spoke last time about Thomas Walton, noticing what we were doing with the soil. A little bit like the Russians did to us in Holland, which cost us not only winning as a team, but cost me winning individually again. So lots and lots of different things. And what I'm going to do today is pick one World Championships that at the time I didn't know how relevant it was going to be to probably Darwa Dawkins' finest hour. Now I'm talking a World Championships of the England team, and the second event I'm going to talk about that I'm going to go on to, and these two are linked. I didn't think ever at the time, back in 2011 when we were fishing in Italy on the Ostellato Canal on the World Championships with Drennan Team England, that I'd ever be back there, or the things that I learnt, more importantly, I'd be able to put to good use, and obviously with the Darwa Dawkins team go on, like I said, to probably our finest hour as the Darwa Dawkins team. But anyway, that's more towards the end of the story. So in 2011, we're on the World Championships on the Ostellato Canal in Italy. Massive, like, landlocked. It looks like a river, but it doesn't really flow. It just drifts from side to side. There's very little boat traffic. It's about 5 to 7 foot deep, quite a hard bottom, absolutely full of skimmers, bream, an odd catfish which can be a bit of a pain. Again, that's something that I'll mention later on. And an odd very big carp, but 99% of the time you're fishing for small skimmers and bream up to £4. So we've gone on the World Championships. Again, we went for 2 weeks. The Ostellato Canal is absolutely massive. You can get yourself 50 miles off the match length, let alone 500 metres. And it, you might have heard me say this about Italy. It's, Hungary very closely followed, but Italy for me is the place to go match fishing. The crowds are fantastic, the venues are always good, and the people were just, show you so much hospitality. It's unbelievable. And a lot of my angling heroes, obviously I've got angling heroes in England, but a lot of my angling heroes and that I looked up to when I first started international fishing, people like Milo Colombo, Roberto Trabucco, like obviously they're Italian, and it just holds a special place in my heart. I've had some fantastic times there. I've had some bad times as well, not caught so many fish, but 9 times out of 10 you catch a lot of fish in Italy, and the whole experience is second to none as far as match fishing is concerned. So we've gone for a couple of weeks. The unofficial weeks are the first week of the 2 weeks. As I've explained before, for those of you that haven't seen one of these before, the World Championships, we normally go for 2 weeks. So the first week is the unofficial practice, where we can sit and do what we want to do. The management haven't arrived yet. It's very relaxed. We can try different things, and on and on and on. And then we go on to the official week, where you have to practice Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday for 4 hours in the morning. Then you can fish for a couple of hours in the afternoon, and then obviously the match Saturday and Sunday. So on the unofficial week, lots of fish. And it seemed like a census sort of lake and leam, make a bit of a cloud. But the one thing that struck me, some days we were catching 60, 70 pound off the match length. On bloodworm, conventional fishing, 13 metres, balling it in. You're allowed to cup then as well. We were cupping like double lean. and you know, we were catching lots of fish. But even in those first few days practice, I can remember thinking to myself, you know, these fish are on the edge of the bait. But having not fished the venue that much before, or hardly ever before, you start thinking, right, that must be what the... Because by this time we built up a picture that the Italians were very, very good on this venue. They'd almost hand-picked it because they were going to be very, very strong. So fishing on the edge of the bait seemed really good. Balling it in just short of your pole tip, cupping it in on your pole tip and almost swinging your rig out so your float would just drift in. And they seem to be what I like to call on the outskirts of your bait. They're not past it, they're not on it, they're right on the outskirts. You know, they want to be on it but they're not sure. A little bit cat and mouse, but we were catching plenty of fish. And going into that official week, you know, we were really, really happy. Now, like I said, this talk's a little bit different because I want to show you the relevance of writing stuff down, taking stuff on board, learning, and then when you get the chance to put it to use, making the most of it. So I'm not going to go too much into the results and this and that and how we did. We didn't do particularly well as a team. I think we were 4th or 5th. We had no real individuals. I think Stuart was 2nd on the first day. Alan was 3rd. I was 5th both days. So we did okay, but again, we were a little bit off the pace. Coming back from that weekend, obviously, the official week's practice, we caught a few fish. But again, it became very, very technical fishing. You had to feed very accurately, fish, like I say, not past it, but on the outskirts of the bait. Like the last sort of 10 centimetres just past your bait, and you caught these nice big bream. Also, there was a line close in, loose feeding maggots for bigger fish, big bream, odd carp, and I'm not talking many fish, if you're lucky if you got a bite there, in fact. But the one problem we did have was catfish were banned this year, and there was a lot of them in there between 3 and 10 pound, and a lot of real big fish. And the powers to be deemed it unsafe to catch them, and I totally understand that. You know, they're big fish. You know, and some of them have got spikes on and this, that and the other, but they didn't count. And when you loose fed maggots close, you could get a few of these in your peg. And the second day on the Sunday, I actually caught 6 or 7 and had to throw them back. Weighed in about 7 or 8 kilos, came 5th in my section, had more than enough. But I'm sure a lot of other people did as well. But this is where it all becomes interesting. Unbeknown to me that I would ever go back to this Ostellato Canal, although after the match and after talking to people, and little things happened. Like on the Friday of practice, we were next to the South Africans, who again, no disrespect, I would expect the England team at bloodworm fishing to catch more than the South Africans, and they caught more than us on the long pole on the bloodworm line. We did catch a lot of fish short, and if, you know, it was team weight against team weight, we probably ended up beating them anyway. But like I say, practicing for show, matches for dough, and that's exactly what it's all about. You've got to remember that practicing's okay, but practicing, you must always remember, it's not about beating people, catching more than people, it's about finding out how to catch more when it really matters. And although what we learn, or what we, not necessarily what we learned, but what we found out after the event. So you can imagine we're going into the World Champs, balling it just short, cupping this double lean, trying to catch on the outskirts of your bait and hoping to catch an odd fish short. Now, after the event, obviously the England team didn't do so well. Individually, again, we had no one in the top 3. But it was a venue that afterwards, talking to people, and afterwards, I mean, literally on the Sunday after the match, you get to see videos at the prize giving of people. Then all of a sudden when you return home, there's a lot of information, you know, on the internet, videos of this, videos of that. And one that I remember was Umberto Balabeni, fantastic angler, world and European champion, fishing for Italy. And I can remember watching this video of his pole out, and he balled it in, and his ground bait went everywhere. From a metre past his pole tip to a metre short, metre left, metre right. and the hooter's gone to start. He shipped it out, dropped his rig in, it's gone straight under and caught a bream. Now, in practice of the World Champs, I've hardly caught a fish on top of my ground bait. Now, as you might remember, let's rewind right the way back to 1998 when I spoke to you about the way to mix ground bait. Now, when you get into ground baits, it's not just how to mix it, wet, dry, medium, but it's different types of ground bait. Some ground baits have a lot of salt in, some ground baits have none. Some ground baits are very active, some ground baits are inert. Some ground baits have a very, very high food content, some ground baits have a very low food content. So when you get to know the ground baits, you can really find out. For instance, like Census, a lot of their ground baits have hardly any salt. They've got a range of ground baits with salt. Vandenine ground baits have a lot of salt, you know, and various other ground baits don't. But one thing that I really realised afterwards was that we'd really gone down the wrong route. The reason we weren't catching fish on top of the ground bait wasn't because these fish were wary. It wasn't because they've been fished for a lot. Straight away my angling brain is, can't catch on my bait, they're wary, they're really like backing off it, you've got a fish just on it, that must be what the Italians are doing. Definitely not. When it came down to it, the ground bait that we used, and I've caught more fish on Lake and Leam than any other mix I can imagine. But for this venue, it just wasn't right. We've since found out that ground baits, like the salt range that Census do, various other ground baits, you know, Vandenine do, and various other, we found out that these high salt content ground baits were the ones. And the reason we were catching just past our feed was because the fish didn't want to come on top of what we were feeding. Simple as that. And again, at the time, you don't realise because you're so in the zone, you're so concentrating, and you just don't realise. But having watched this video and spoken to other people, also a very, very good thing that came out of this World Championships, and those of you that have fished with bloodworm and this, that and the other will know the feeding method of pongo, which is just damp leam over wetted with some grey leam, and it literally goes like plasticine, and you cup it in, throw it if you want, but it doesn't break up for a good hour and a half, 2 hours if it's prepared right. Like I say, it needs to be wetted down till it all starts to ball up and almost go like a bit doughy. Then it needs to be riddled, then your bait added, and then you can squeeze it into rock hard balls, really heavy. Your pole's bent double trying to cut these balls in. But what that does is you're able to put a big bed of bait in that doesn't break up immediately, but breaks up very slowly in the first hour and a half, 2 hours, releasing bait into your peg. And on this venue, it was vitally important. Now, we'd never even fished with pongo. We didn't know how to prepare it. You know, and needless to say, the Italians romped to victory. And Feeney won the individual, so they had a fantastic time, and all credit to them. You know, I'm the first one to take my hat off and to congratulate people. You know, credit where credit's due. It was a technical venue. They knew exactly how to feed it, but their biggest mistake was they publicised what they did, some of their anglers, not necessarily the team, but little did they know it was going to come back and bite them in the behind. Now, obviously, we've gone away. I've got it here, the trusty black book. Open it the right way. Let's go to the back. There it is. Italy, 2011 World Champs, page 23. Here we go. Bear with me while I find this. I just want to read you some of the notes I wrote down when I got back. Okay, here we go. Ostellato Canal 2011. I feel that the ground bait we used wasn't right. And bearing in mind I made these notes a little bit, you know, I sort of wrote a few down, then obviously saw something else, got told something else, wrote a little bit more down. So, I felt the ground bait we used wasn't right. The fish would not come on top of our bait. Maybe we need to use a different ground bait. The South Africans on the Friday caught more than us on the long pole on bloodworm, question mark, question mark, question mark. They used Vandenine Black Turbo or a very salty ground bait similar. maybe the sensor salt range would be very good. Also, Pongo / wetted lean is unbelievably important on this venue, with bloodworm, maybe potting, maybe throwing. This is something we have to look at. An active ground bait is very important to put your ground bait in dry. Ground bait must be very, very salty for the fish to come on top. Very, very important. If this venue is ever revisited, make sure you try a salty ground bait. Now, I've got lots and lots of notes here with floats, elastic, this and this. But it was the sort of experience, having come back from that World Championships, where and as anglers, I know when I say this, you'll go, I know exactly what you mean. You know, at the end of the match where you think, didn't do that right. I would love to go back to the beginning and have another go, because I know I could win this. I know I could. That was the feeling. Having been there for 2 weeks, thought we'd worked it out, thought we'd done this, and to be fair, we were a little way off. But having found out what the Italians had done and the way they'd fed it, it was like, oh, please let me go back. Please, I just want to have another go, because it's such a good venue. It's full of fish, it's this and this. However, like I said, one of the biggest mistakes that not the Italians made, you know, and but the information was there for those that wanted to find out exactly how they'd fished it. And they hadn't just won, they'd annihilated the event. Doing absolutely fantastic. I mean, they're an awesome team that do well anywhere, but they really did take the mickle on this event. And it was so important to find out, just in case, like we have done on a few venues, we've revisited them, you know, in later years. And it's so important. And I know I spoke about the Black Book, but you can see, you know, like, where did it go? The sort of detail that I go to on certain venues. You know, there's pages and pages and pages of information, little things, you know, like the Ostellato 23. You know, I noticed the thing down here. You must take long legs for your platform. Certain areas very, very uncomfortable. High banks, long drops, 4 metre keep net, 5 metre landing net pole. It's little things like this that give you that edge that you don't have to worry about when you're out there. Absolutely worth a lot more than its weight in gold, this book. But like I say, this is where the story takes a twist from a little bit of a downer, having learned, to, hang on a minute, we can put this right. So, forward wind a few years, my domestic team, Darwin Dorking, we qualified for the World Club Championships, which is, you know, apart from the World and European Championships with the England team, domestic club fishing, this is what you aspire to get to. And the World Club Championships is the pinnacle of team fishing, you know, taking away the England thing. You know, you can't get any higher than representing your country and your local team, your domestic team, in the World Club Championships. And a couple of years before, we'd been third. So you can imagine, to my delight and excitement, I literally couldn't sleep when I knew that we qualified, and it's on the Ostellato Canal, on the same stretch as the 2011 World Championships. I could not wait. As soon as I knew where it was and we qualified, I was in this room, rigs, line, elastic, mixes, pongo everywhere, buckets full of water, timing the breakdown times, and I just couldn't wait. And what a fantastic team we had. You know, I'm not talking an England team. Obviously, when you're fishing with the likes of, you know, Alan Scott on and Sean Ashby, you know, they're on another level. But our domestic team was unbelievably good. You had me and Callum travelling together, Lee Edwards, Des, Darren, Simon Willsmore. Now, obviously, Steve Sanders as manager, who then went on to be joint England manager. You know, I have to say, Steve Sanders, Mark Addy, Mark Downs, Dick Clegg, you know, I can't fault any of them. But I've fished in the Darwin Dorking team with Steve Sanders as the manager for a number of years. Got utmost respect for him. Again, tactically, you know, he very, very rarely gets it wrong. Awesome angler in his own right, but a absolutely fantastic, you know, manager. The way he manages his anglers, and that absolutely second to none. We also had another major advantage, and that was a very good friend of mine and Steve, Szilard from Hungary. He came over. He was very knowledgeable on this venue as well, as he'd fished the 2011 World Champs for the Hungarian team. And Szilard actually offered to come. We had rented a lovely farmhouse about 15 miles, 12 miles from the venue. And again, we went for 2 weeks. Me and Callum driving out there. I remember it like it was yesterday, because I just got my new van, and I was, Callum, don't put that there. Don't get that muddy. Don't put your feet there. Literally just like an old man trying to look after my new van. But by the way, I backed that into the post yesterday and knocked that down and dented the van, so it doesn't look so good at the moment. But anyway, a fantastic week actually happened. And again, we went for 2 weeks, so the unofficial practice week. So you can imagine there's myself, Callum, Des, Lee Edwards, Darren Davis, and Simon Willsmore. And just a little rundown on each angler. Obviously, myself and Callum and Des established in the England team. You know, it's just a fantastic feeling going to a venue where you know what to do. You know the venue, you know the method, you know what to feed, and you're surrounded by awesome, awesome anglers in your team. So obviously you've got Callum, Des, Simon Willsmore again, he's represented England. Darren Davis, in my opinion, you know, the best angler not to fish a World Championships in England. Absolutely superb. You can give him a rod, you can give him a pole, you can give him a bolognese rod, whatever you want, and he will do it very, very well. Obviously Lee Edwards as well, Welsh international, European champion as a team. Awesome, awesome team. And the practice went really well. Again, we're practicing. We're not trying to beat each other. We're practicing. We're fishing with pongo. We're fishing with active, salty ground bait. I think we used the brown bream and various other mixes that we managed to get that were very, very salty. And it was just so good. I love the opportunity, not just in fishing, in life, but to right wrongs. I love it. I love it to be able to go back and actually put it right. And that's what we were able to do. Again, fantastic venue. Loads and loads of fish. It didn't change. It was literally like we'd gone back the next day after 2011. It's 3, 4, 5 years later. Awesome venue, full of fish. And I remember the first day of the official week, again, we tried different things in the unofficial week, caught lots of fish, but it came apparent salty, active ground bait. A big amount of pongo, 20 balls potted in decent balls, not little tiny nuggets, proper balls, you know, like the size of a satsuma type thing. Really bent your pole over. You're putting a big bed of bait in and waiting for the fish and catching them. But by putting a dry active mix in, you attracted them straight into your peg, and you had all this lean, you know, stacked up on the bottom, and you just caught loads and loads of fish when you fed it right. Going into the official week, I was the only one on the first day to put pongo in on the pole. We wanted to just see on the match length, and I caught like 45 pound. It was ridiculous. Spent 2 hours on a waggler, caught a handful of fish, dropped it in on the pole, and it was absolutely ridiculous. And from then on, we just practiced all week, mixing the ground bait back at the digs, trying to keep everything secret. We were feeding. You're allowed to feed bloodworm back then in the internationals. It's all changed. You're not actually allowed to feed bloodworm, but we were balling it in, 7 litres, nice and soft, active mix, dark mix, real nice, rich sort of hemp ground bait that would fizz and bubble, but really dry. Then we were potting in 4 kilos of wetted down lean, which was about 20-25 balls with half a litre of bloodworm in it. A few casters in the mix and a little bit of joker, but not too much. And then you just go and you catch a few little fish, and then normally you catch some bigger bream. Going on to the first day, now, obviously, you know, practicing as a team is absolutely vital. And the fact that we had this experience. Myself and Des have been in the world team before on this venue, and we had a lot of knowledge accumulated between us. I'd written a lot of stuff down. Obviously Sillard had come along, which was a massive help. He looked after the bait. He came up with different tactics, feeding little tiny bits of sticky joker after the fish had gone, and we just had it absolutely bang on. Couldn't wait really, mate. Couldn't wait for the weekend to come. Just trying to put things right. And I remember the Saturday, I got to my peg, and there's a tree right in the middle of my zone, almost like they pegged it, in the dark. I was on the phone to Steve Sanders, the Italian commissioners, and that came down, locked this side of the tree off, and I was managed to fish luckily right next to it. So next to a good friend of mine, Christoph from Census. We had a little bit of a battle, but I managed to beat him. I weighed in just over 17 kilo. He had about 10. And I won the section. And we were in a very commanding, position. Tubertini team from Italy were right up there as well. Gabba's team. Team of young anglers, all very good. But again, after that first day, everything worked absolutely perfectly. I think I won my section. I think Callum was second. Just, the whole team did well, and we were right up there. Going into the second day, confident was absolutely, through the roof. And just to show you how well we had it, sort of nailed the feeding. On the second day, 4-hour match, remember, after 2 hours and 20 minutes, I've had a massive catfish, probably 60, 80 pound, come up on my pole line, dive down, a mass of bubbles, and I never had another bite all day. Gone. So after 2 hours and 20 minutes this happened, the last hour and 40 minutes, never had another bite. Now I've weighed in 10 kilo 200, and the guys either side of me had less than a kilo. So that just shows you. I was third in my section, I just missed out. But again, the boys did fantastically well. The feeding and everything we'd learned had really come to the fore and come together. And I can remember it, we won the event. I think Callum was third individual, I was fourth. And it was the most emotional fishing day of my life. I mean, I've been in a privileged position, team-wise, we've won world and European championships. But to be there with guys that I've grown up with and fished at club level and fished every week with, anglers like Darren Davis, anglers like Simon Willsmore, Des, not so much Lee because he lives a long way away, but Callum, virtually Callum's grown up alongside us fishing in the team. And more importantly, Steve Sanders and Sillard. But I can remember the most emotional I've ever been on a bank was when Steve Sanders pulled up. And you can't do it now, social distancing, but we had a massive hug. And we were both virtually in tears, like we'd won the World Club Championships. Now, not taking anything away from the anglers, they did a fantastic job. And like I say, there wasn't an angler in that team that day or in the squad that didn't deserve his place there. They're all, top anglers. And, you just wouldn't want to bet against them. And it was an absolute privilege to fish with the guys. But we had it absolutely nailed on. And it just goes to show that taking notice and gleaning information, you might not go back to that venue for a year, might be 5 years, might be 10 years. But trust me, what you notice, what you find out, what you write in your book will be relevant, and it will help you and it will give you an edge. That's just one example, and I wanted to share it with you because obviously the World Championships wasn't so good. We actually learnt a lot, and we went back and we made history with the Darwa Dorking team. Winning the World Club Championships was the icing on the cake as far as my Dorking career was concerned, and I couldn't think of a better bunch of lads to do it with. So I think the moral of the story is, even if you're not sure if you're going to ever go back to this venue, make notes, ask questions, and try and find out where you went wrong, and more importantly, where the guys that won did it right. And if you can find that out, take some notes, you never know when that's going to be a major advantage. So it's one that I wanted to do. the 2011 World Champs and the World Clubs. I'd just like to end this one by saying, you know, I hope you're all out there enjoying your fishing. I haven't fished a match yet myself. I'm out on the lakes most evenings, having a go for the F1s and just keeping myself in tune. A little bit of limbo at the moment. Me and Tamas have booked in for the World Pairs in Ireland and a couple of other events, but again, we're waiting to see if they happen. I've got a few fish shows booked for the coming months, so I can't wait, to be honest. I'm really looking forward to it. Again, doing preparation and practicing, so if I get that chance, I can make the most of it. I really hope you've enjoyed it. I want to thank you again for your kind messages. I'm probably going to do one of the later World Championships in the next one, so keep your eyes peeled for that. But until now, tight lines and take care of yourself. Bye-bye.